Hi, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and hey, you can do this. Because this is Airwindows Fracture2. Now this is coming out by request because somebody in my YouTube comments, who I actually have some things in common with, suggested it, and it turned out to be possible to do. It is a kind of wavefolder, and you can see it here. We've got drive, fracture, thresh, output, and dry wet. These are all kind of smoothed except for fracture, which is integer, although I'm using it in twisted wave, which is not as smooth as it might be. Kind of is. Depends on how fast I move it. And this is doing a wavefolding. Like if we apply this, we can see that is what we got. That's what wavefolding is kind of wrapping around in a sine algorithm, but it does more than just that, I'll tell you. Because when we go and use this fracture control, we start multiplying the position. It sort of goes exponential. And what does that mean? Let me show you. This is ordinary wavefolding. But if we start multiplying it, you can go farther. Which is a pretty aggressive little noise. But wait, there's more. This is not anti-aliased. It kind of can't be because it just goes to extreme. And there's more. This is still just a base sine wave fed into it. That's just 3. It goes all the way up to 8. Now there's an interesting side effect to it being made so exponential like that. Firstly, the onset seems to have gone crazy for some reason. This is kind of what you would see from pushing it really far. It's probably not so different from some of the crazier noise engineering drum sample things. But you can see that the center of these waves, even at a very small amount, it's not doing the sine wave thing anymore. It's kind of resisting kicking in, and then it goes exponential, and then it goes beyond, and what that gets you to is the bit at the very beginning, and this is what we were hearing when it sounded so wild, was this kind of noise. And that's easy to demonstrate again. Back to fracture. Very aggressive noise. And we can do it without so many additional sort of multiplications from fracture. But it still kind of gets there. It still kind of gets to the extreme position that it was in. So what's this thresh? Thresh is what the fellow in my chat was suggesting. And I can demonstrate that using fracture at 0, although it will also work with anything else. Like it'll work with this super crazy fracture. And what it does is this. It converts the wavefold to a soft clip. What we've got here is essentially a soft clip. You can see that it's just like pretty close to a square wave. But if we go back and do the same thing again, and give a little bit more than 0 of this threshold, there's our wavefold. If we introduce just a little bit of it, we get this. It's kind of like a square wave, and there's a little wavefold sort of snuck in on top there. And you can blend however much of the wavefold you want. As soon as it goes beyond what would be your soft clip, that's when you can start dialing it in with this threshold control. And what becomes interesting about that is if we are doing the crazy extremeness, it'll be this, and we use the thresh to only give a small amount of it, then apply that, we can see that we've got a funny sort of square wavy thing going on. The top of it looks just like noise because we've pushed it so far into the crazy wavefolding thing. And again, this is not aliased. I mean, this is not anti-aliased, rather. Excuse me. Police are going by. All kinds of interesting things are happening out in the world today, and they're probably not going to be quite as interesting here as they are in some other places. I'm recording this on Saturday. It's a big day for the world. Note that the sides of these seeming square waves are a little unusual, and that's because the way that this has been handled, that sort of exponential behavior, it kicks in like this. So rather than having a smooth passage through 0 on into the wavefolding realms, we have a smooth passage through what gets close to almost flat. It really kind of avoids. It makes stuff that's really quiet in the waveform all the quieter. And then as you get louder, it goes into the wavefold zone and then it goes completely crazy. Or you can turn it into a soft clip, but if you turn this into a soft clip, you get something else. You'd get this. It seems like it took a while to kick in. That's interesting. I'm not exactly sure how this is going to work for all purposes, but we've got a nice hard clip there, but the middle of our apparent square wave isn't really that square at all. And we can exaggerate this even more, although that's already pretty exaggerated, to be honest. Just crank it up so intensely that it's nothing but a roar. Might be a good way of coming up with like hi-hat sounds or something for all I know. Apply that. And we've got very close to a purely square wave, a very sharp-edged wave, except for that the middle of it is still a funny little shape because of this fracture control. And you might wonder what this sounds like if you heard it on an actual sound. Well, I don't know about an actual sound, but I've got a drum recording from a track Rise. And so, if you use this on, say, a drum kit, you would wind up with a big noise, right? Or regular clipping. This is what the original sounds like. Fresh at 0, it's nothing but a soft clip. Wrap it around, and rather than being a soft clip, it's wrapping around again, so it's going to treat transients a little unusually. But then if we start kicking in Fracture, interesting things happen. What do you think of that? Because Fracture is engaged, we're kind of doing that crossover thing where it flattens out at the crossover. This becomes a quieter crossover area. We can exaggerate it even more. You note that you're still hearing those quiet cymbals, the ride in there, but the transients are going completely crazy. Or they can be straight up clipping. You can hear what it's doing when it's pushing this hard. Is we're getting a really unusual sort of transient attack, which can be exaggerated. Or minimized. I'm turning it down a little below unity gain here. Or just go back to 0 again for largely unaltered sound. And then we start sneaking in the Fracture, and what's going to happen is the transient energy and the softness of the sound will kind of expand outwards from each other. Could come in useful for maybe a kick drum or something. You can hear how it's doing a more exaggerated kick sound. And if you'd like more of a crazy click on the front of the kick drum, we can go away from this threshold, which is making this act like a soft clip that isn't a soft clip anymore, to that sort of spitty sound at the beginning, and that is Fracture kicking in. For a really aggressive click on the front of that kick drum, because it is a sort of nasty wavefolding mess. And it's going to be a little different each time. And you could also combine it with dry. There you have it. Or combine it with dry, take the threshold off a little bit. For more of a sort of distorty quality that still has some fuzz and weird edge on it. Well, there you have it. So Fracture2 is a free open source plugin. It's audio unit in VST2, and that is for Macs and Windows and Linux and Raspberry Pi if you're running the same kind of Raspberry Pi that I'm running. I'm building it on a Raspberry Pi 400. If anybody knows lots about this stuff, talk to me, because I'm given to understand it's not actually compiling for 64-bit ARM, and I don't know how to change that. So maybe if somebody does, all of the Raspberry Pi stuff will then be compiled for a broader range of things that you can use. For now, I'm building it on my Raspberry Pi 400, which will run on the Reaper that is also running on my Raspberry Pi 400. And yeah, I hope you like this. I'm real busy right now. It's going to be an interesting Monday because I have my coding stream and all, but I'm not really going to be able to work because I have been trying to rebuild my subwoofers. The subwoofers that people have heard in my live streams that are very overpowering. I got some fun glue it together yourself subwoofer boxes from Parts Express, which I'm enjoying greatly. And remember, I don't make enough money for any of these people to give me stuff, so I have to pay for everything that I get. That's probably always going to be the case. I don't see why I would change it. And I enjoyed building them. And then I found out that the plate amplifiers that I used, which also were from the same place, I had bent them to fit onto the cardboard tubes that the original subwoofers were on. They're a wonderful sort of ghetto subwoofer building thing. But they tended to buzz if I got too loud with them, and you can hear it in my live streams. So I got better enclosures. I had this wonderful design for a isobaric woofer orientation, which turned out not to work, and then also the plate amplifiers were broken. This is one of them. But what that does mean, since they were so broken, I could take them completely apart, and now I can figure out, oh, it's just so broken it came right off. Now I can figure out how to mod this and change some of these capacitors so I can get more low bass extension out of the same plate amplifier thing. And thankfully they're real cheap, and I don't monitor so loud that I would need them to be PA system volume really. So that worked out pretty well. But the studio is down for the count for the moment, and I'm also still waiting on the Mackity, so this is not going to be my most music-filled week coming up. But I'm going to build away, and next time I come back with subwoofers and a Mackity and all kinds of things, I'll really be in a better position to first hear what stuff does, and then do things to try to make my plugins resemble the stuff. And that holds for the Mackity. And again, I am not going to make a Mackity plugin. What I'm going to do is find great sounding patches and then come up with my own reverbs and have them do the same basic job as the Mackity stuff that I'll be able to use in my studio. I will try to meet or beat the tone qualities of those things, because no wonder I'm groping for being able to see those. I got to put my glasses on. I think people will be disappointed if they didn't get to see me looking over the top of the glasses, so got you covered. I'm not doing an actual Mackity plugin, but I'm going to try to mimic the tone qualities and depth of what I hear out of mine when it shows up, which is paid for, and hopefully it'll show up before July. I don't know, we'll see. Likewise, I've been working really hard on recording things like classic records, and in one of my live streams I was playing lots of stuff off of classic records where React people were able to listen to them, and it got covered with copyright claims, but I was still able to play some stuff and people could hear how loud the bass was off of that. Well, I figure if I bring those things into Reaper projects and then track drums over them or something, and then devise my ways of, here. Well, as long as, well, no, actually I can't do that, can I? Never mind. I was going to demonstrate some of my test EQs. I'm trying to work out EQs that can give the same tone quality as these classic consoles that people used. And I've done a bunch of research on it, but the remaining thing comes from going, you know, quad 8 console sounds like this, and it's heard in all these different things, including a whole bunch of, for instance, Frank Zappa, all the way from probably Mother's 71 to probably One Size Fits All. At least it sounds to me as if that was what that stuff was coming off, because there's a particular kind of high frequencies. But as they went along into the 70s, recordings started sucking out more and more of the mid-range like mad, and everything started leaning on what these particular consoles, and that is also true for Steely Dan, was known to record in quad 8s. In fact, it is seen on the Countdown for Ecstasy album in the back cover. A lot of people use these things, but they didn't start out exaggerating the tone controls as much as it ended up happening in the mid and late 70s when these things started getting really exaggerated. I think if I record stuff in my studio, like bass and drums and so on, over these album recordings, and then get my plugins to be able to deliver the same sound that is on these recordings, where I figure they ran into these consoles and were cranking the controls out like crazy. And this is hardly new. I mean, the Beatles were doing that as well. The Beatles were known for increasingly going to where it's like, okay, turn the treble up all the way, turn the bass up all the way, okay, that's better. And that became very popular in the mid-70s. So, yeah, I am busily working on all of this stuff. And I'm hoping to have more fun with it when I have my subwoofers working better. But also, like, bear with me and I will have cooler things coming on a weekly basis. I have a nice little buffer built up again. The EQ that I designed to do this stuff with, which I'm calling the pair EQ, I have a little single band version of that, which is just a low pass or a high pass. That could be coming out pretty soon. And that is an EQ which, for this release only, not necessarily for use in console emulations of real desks, but for this design, everything about it, including the cutoff frequency, uses my shifting of bits technique, and similarly to Console 0, and that is proving to be an interesting thing to pursue. So I'm definitely excited to see what comes next, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.